What's up, y'all? Sparta here. For this video, I want to talk Xiaomi 13 Ultra, mainly because I haven't really talked about it since like the last video I posted about it, which obviously would be the comparing it to the 14 Ultra. But before that, it just hasn't been a while. It's been a while, so let's talk about it. Um, I want to talk about why still this phone is still a great buy today, even if you want to go 14 Ultra. I'm not necessarily saying the 14 Ultra is a bad buy. Depending on who you are, it definitely is. It depending on what you value when it comes to your phone's cameras and whatnot, and the improvements that the 14 Ultra makes. I don't think it's a bad buy at all. But this isn't a like 14 Ultra buyer beware cope session. So let's get into this here. Um, so this phone, the 13 Ultra, it was between this and the Xperia 1 Mark V at the time. I was rocking my 1 Mark III. I really liked the 1 Mark III. I was like, I may as well just upgrade the 1 Mark III to the 1 Mark V. But then I was scrolling through Amazon, and what did I see? Xiaomi 13 Ultra. And I was like, huh? What? You can't be real. This can't be real right now. So, I saved up for a couple of months. Knows what? It actually took me longer to save for this than it did for my 14 Ultra. Even though I think they costed around, I think they both were like around $1,100. But either way, I got the phone. I saved up for it, got it, and I've used it. And man, this phone I love a lot. I really do love this phone a lot. It looks like a camera. I really do like how this thing looks. Man, that f1.63 aperture on this phone. Sorry, now I'm gushing over the 14 Ultra. Now this is gonna be an issue. um, what would I say the 13 Ultra still has that I would definitely say isn't a bad deal at all to go with? What I would say is definitely a something to keep in mind is that for the most part, even though you get, aside from the main sensor, the same three, you get the same three companion sensors, there are key differences when it comes to how certain things are done on the 14 Ultra to 13 Ultra. But when it comes to, like, say, sure, the f-stop on the periscope zoom, it's f3 on here, it's 2.5 on the 14 Ultra. F1.8 on the other two, it's the same as it is between the two. F1.63 on the main lens when it comes to the 14 Ultra, and F1.9. And you get a variable aperture from F1.63 all the way to F4. And when you go to the Pro mode on the 14 Ultra, you get far more granular control. I feel like the variable aperture on the 13 Ultra is just not that useful, because especially if you're relying it on an auto mode, you just don't see it trigger. It doesn't trigger at all unless you're in a very extreme situation. But it's nice to have either way. It does help with things like making sure that more of the subject is in focus and whatnot. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's downright unusable and useless, but it is something that I would say you won't use all that much, if at all. Especially when you want that creamy background blur. Because when you stop back down to F4, basically the background blur on this phone looks like basically every other phone on the market. Whereas when you have it wide open, it just, man, man, it's just crazy. But yeah, you have a Summicron lens on here instead of a Summa Lux like on the 14 Ultra. Still very good at things like making sure lens flares aren't that big of a deal. The overall auto mode processing, whether you're in like a authentic or like a vibrant, is very good. things like denoising and making sure that it gets the proper, like it gets a shot that's properly in focus, is something that's very good on here as well. The detail, even when you're not shooting in a full 50 megapixel type deal, is still very nice. It is very nice to also be able to use the full 50 megapixels and just be able to crop in, so you don't necessarily have to use like the medium telephoto at all. That's why I definitely do say things like I feel like the medium telephoto on here is kind of useless, because you can't be that close to a subject. So let me show you. On the 14 Ultra, I can be like right here and take an in focus shot of, say, as you guys can see, the rim that's around the camera ring on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra's case, right? I could be like right here. On the 13 Ultra, I gotta be like way, like at least right here, like to get even an in focus shot. Now, just to prove that, I'll take a picture. So it's in focus here. And then I move into like right here, and it just won't, it won't focus. So as you guys can see, it focused on what's under it, under the case and beyond it, right? Whereas on the other photo, it had all that in focus. Now, I'm not going to take the 14 Ultra. I'm using it right now to record, so I'm not going to show you exactly what I mean when it comes to that without having to stop the video. But, that's just what I wanted to show you. It overall just makes the medium telephoto kind of irrelevant, I would say. It is nice to still have, especially if you don't want to get all that close, but the 14 Ultras is definitely a stark improvement. Let's talk about the design and the overall feel of this phone. Let me take it out of the case here. Now, I really like the design of this phone. It looks very nice. It looks very professional. I like the kind of boxy-ish feel of it. It's definitely not, some would say it's not a looker. A lot of people don't like the raised camera hump right there. I do like it because it gives me a little bit of an anchor when it comes to, holding the phone. And then so it's actually very nice. And now obviously it makes sense as to why it has that, because look at the camera. It is huge, right? It is huge. So what would be the problem with that? What would really be the issue with that? I don't know. You get a phone like this, you should expect that. The curved display, I don't like it. I'm glad with the 14 Ultra they decided to go with the kind of display tech that they're doing now, because this gets utterly annoying to deal with at times, and I'm glad curved displays are going away. Honestly, they never even should have been popularized. They never should have been popularized. It just doesn't make sense to have like this ergonomic kind of issue, especially when it comes to phones that don't have very good edge detection. It just doesn't make sense. But overall, I really do like the look and feel of this phone. Over a year, there are not any nicks, really. There's like one right there, as you guys can see, the little white spot right there. There's a little one in the corner right there. And overall, and like one small, it won't focus on up. Let me try to, one right, like a little one right there, right? But if I compare this to my One Mark III a year in, boy, that mug was in the case. It's basically his whole life and always had a screen protector on it. I literally bought a 3-pack screen protector for it, so that when one broke, and one did break, I had another one on deck. So for it to be a year in and this still not have any like weird damage around the USB-C port, which you guys probably can't see because like any weird damage on the USB-C port or anything like that. It's a godsend, in my opinion. Um, and it goes to show how much more attention to like durability Xiaomi has over someone like Sony. And I know I've kind of become the Sony basher as of late, but man, they really need to up their game when it comes to durability. Because just having a cute little macro mode on that dinky little sensor that you have, periscope that you have, is not going to make me say, "Oh, but they took away all the things I like." That's fine, though. But overall, this phone to me is a looker. I like the faux leather far more than like glass. I think glass on a phone this expensive is stupid, especially if you want to have it have the feel of a camera. It makes more sense to have this kind of leather-ish feel to it. And it does feel like leather. I will say the 14 Ultra definitely feels a little bit more like leather than this does, but there's still grip to it, and I really do like how this feels a lot. The charging, the battery life on this phone is really good. I get like 8 to 10 hours of screen on time still to this day, a year later. 90-watt charging, you can charge your phone from like 10%, like 0 to 100 in like 28 minutes. I put this phone on a charger like a half an hour before I go to work, and guess what? Well, before I swapped over to the 14 Ultra, and guess what? It's still got to 100%. I couldn't do that like on the V60. I love my V60. I had to wait an hour and a half before I went to work to put on the charger. With the fucking One Mark III, same deal. With every Samsung phone, same deal. But with this, it's like it just 28 minutes later, boop, 100%, bro. Let's go. That's very nice. 50-watt wireless charging, so even the wireless charging on this phone slaps around every other major phone on the market. like like there are still phones that are out now that just have like 15-watt wireless charging, 45-watt or 30-watt or 27-watt fast charging, and it just doesn't make any sense. This phone, no matter whether you want to charge it wirelessly or wired, will get you there, and that's actually really nice. No headphone jack, obviously. No SD card expansion, obviously. That is the one downgrade I would say from a Sony phone, is that you get used to having those, especially if before that you came from LG. You get used to having those, and you just don't have that on here. But I do feel like at this point, it's become more of a minor inconvenience than a drawback for me, because I still have my LG G7. I still am planning to get yet another V60, and maybe, just maybe, might end up copping a Velvet 2 Pro off of eBay. We'll see. You know, we'll see. We'll see. I'm not gonna tease that and not be definitive about it. But overall, I do feel like this phone is it's still a very well designed phone, and it doesn't look outdated. It only looks and feels outdated when you compare it to literally the next phone up from it, the 14 Ultra, because you still have phones like the Vivo X100 Pro and X100 Ultra that have the curved displays. So it's not necessarily that the phone feels outdated. It just feels like the previous version of what the 14 Ultra is. And that's not a bad thing. That is not a bad thing at all. Let's talk. Goddamn, kid. Goddamn, kid. Let's talk about the overall camera experience now. I haven't really used this phone as a video recording phone until very recently. I tried to co-opt my OnePlus 9 Pro into being a video recording phone, because yes, it does have a Snapdragon 888, but my previous experience with the Snapdragon 888 was the One Mark III, and the One Mark III would not jitter when it gets too hot. It would not frame drop when it gets too hot. It would just stay going at 4K 120 the entire time, and I'd have any sort of issue with that. So for me, I just thought, maybe the OnePlus 9 Pro will be similar. Nope. No. And that sucks. Because unless I decide to record at 1080p, I just can't use that. I can't use that camera, and I'm not trying to subject you guys to 1080p video. It just doesn't make any sense, even though these are the videos I tend to make, right? But regardless, I like to have decent looking videos. So that's just something that I don't really, I'm not jiving with. But so far, I do like the video that comes out of here. I just gotta be more acclimated to it because it is a big phone and it is a heavy phone. But what is nice is that, especially with this case on it, I could just keep it on its side and it'll stay up. In terms of software, this still is running MIUI 14 for me, mainly because it's the Chinese version of the phone that has the global ROM on it, but the global version of the Xiaomi 13 Ultra does not have a 16 gigabyte variant. So there's kind of some weird things going on there. And I can't do things like use Google Pay or, anything like that, which does kind of suck. But thankfully, my 14 Ultra allows me to do that. So if I really do run into any sort of significant issues, I might just say screw it, even though there might be things that are omitted when I go up to, when I do all that and like upgrade or Hyper OS. I was about to say Harmony OS. I was about to say fucking Origin OS. I was about to say all the Chinese brand OSs except for Hyper OS. I don't have a Huawei and I don't have a Vivo, but I almost did it. But yeah, overall, I think the software experience is, fine. I didn't have much bloatware, if at all, from memory. I typically tune that out and just delete because normally if it's stuff that I use, like I think AliExpress was on this phone. I use AliExpress mainly because how else are you going to get cases for this phone in the US? How else are you going to get cases for the Xiaomi 14 Ultra in the US that are just like one or two different cases? You got to use AliExpress for that. So I use AliExpress, and that's how I got this case here. And a lot of other cases that I end up throwing out like last week is like, I'm not going to use these. I mainly just use this one. And it's like, it's nice. The clip-on case that came with the 13 Ultra sucks because unlike the 14 Ultra's case that came with it in the box, it doesn't cover the bottom. It doesn't really have any sort of coverage for like the buttons really. But this side I think is covered. I don't remember. But this is definitely a better clip-on case compared to the 13 Ultra's case. I should have brought it out with me, but I wasn't really thinking I was going to do a 13 Ultra video. I was mainly planning on doing a 14 Ultra video. But yeah, in terms of that, very nice. There are things when you go from like MIUI to HyperOS that are different. Like in terms of say like overall speed, a lot of things feel a little bit more blocky on here. Like a lot of this doesn't look the same. But I did end up switching to this kind of notification panel because that's just how it is on the 14 Ultra, and you can't change it to go back to how the stock Android thing is. So I just decided just to be more accustomed to it and to not be confused going between each phone to just switch it to this. But yeah, you get this. It has been very nice to have, things like Me Share on this phone because the 14 Ultra doesn't have Quick Share. So being able to, transfer photos and even videos between each phone has been very nice to do. Things like being able to go into like the second space is definitely a little bit more laggy. Not laggy. It has a little bit more of it takes a little bit more to do. it takes a little bit longer to get to that. Whereas on the 14 Ultra, it's faster. Do I necessarily feel like the 13 Ultra is a slow phone? No, despite the fact that it just jumped there. But that's mainly because I just left the second space. And I have a bunch of apps on here I don't really need. But camera, let's talk about the cameras some more. The cameras on this phone are still fantastic. I mainly shoot in Leica Authentic. I don't really use things like the portrait mode on here, mainly because especially compared to the 14 Ultra, where you can use it across every focal length except the ultra wide, it's kind of limited. So that does suck. And fast shot, I did use a little bit on here too, but I'd use it more on the 14 Ultra because, yet again, aside from the ultra wide, you can use it across every focal length. Pro mode on here, though, probably the definite reason why I don't necessarily want to put this on HyperOS is because I can use, guys probably won't be able to see it that well, Leica Authentic in 50 megapixel mode, whereas on the 14 Ultra, I can't do that because they arbitrarily limit it, probably because of the lesser, quote unquote, lesser phones that also have Leica branding on them that also give these capabilities. What I would rather you do, Xiaomi, what I would rather you do is just have those cheaper phones also have it. Look, I get it. I understand. You don't want all your phones to do the exact same thing. You don't want people, oh, I could just get this phone. I could just get this $500 Xiaomi with Leica co-engineering. It'll do the same thing. Let those people think that way. Because guess what? The people that are buying like a 13T Pro or eventually a 14T are not going to go with a 14 Ultra. They're probably not even going to go with a goddamn 14 Pro. They may go with a 14. But don't limit your flagships, your ultra flagships, just because the lesser phones, you don't want the lesser phones to do it. I would much rather and it's kind of this weird thing because it's coming from somebody that used to rock with LG, right? LG, when it would have even phones that came out within the, say 3-4 months between each other, like say a G5 and a V30, not G5, yeah, G5 and a V30. Was it? No, V20. G5 and V20. The G5 wouldn't have features that the V20 had, even though they're supposed to be running the same software, right? Like the exact same software, but certain capabilities just weren't available on the G5 compared to the V20. Or even worse, when the G5 came out after the V10, it didn't have manual video mode. That's just something that just wasn't the case, right? I get not wanting to have that sort of deal, but at the same time, I would much rather just have it to where this little thing right here is kind of like intrinsic to the experience. Let those lesser phones have that too. It makes no sense for me to have to go back to a MIUI 14 running Xiaomi phone and be able to get one small thing. But it's whatever. I'm like, it's not a big deal, but it's something I definitely do feel. It just makes no sense. And, you can do 4K 60 up to 4K 60 on here. Very smooth video, very nice stabilized video. I really do like that a lot. I will say it definitely is more jumpy on here than it is on the 14 Ultra. Sometimes when you go super fast, it'll just fade into it. But this isn't something to me that I even really care about. A lot of people bring this up as if it's a gigantic point. Oh, how it jumps from one camera to the other is very jarring. Yeah, well, look at where the damn cameras are placed. They're placed completely differently. Now, it's nice on the 14 Ultra that the main and the medium telephoto are right next to each other. That's nice. And I do feel the symmetry is definitely better on that front. But for me personally, I don't necessarily see an issue because it's like it's never something for me that I don't zoom in from one focal length to the other in videos really, so it's not even that big of a deal for me personally. But in terms of call quality and connections on Mint Mobile, I'm only able to get LTE on this phone, but on Google Fi I can get 5G. That really makes no sense. It is a dual SIM phone. That's nice. So I was actually able to test that no problem. But this is a dual SIM phone, so that's nice at the very least. No eSIM, which is odd. I don't know if the 14 Ultra has eSIM, but the 13 Ultra doesn't have it. It is kind of unfortunate. It would be nice to have that, but whatever. It's not that big of a deal for me personally. Um, but yeah, I can get 5G on Google Fi. I don't really understand why I can't get it on Mint Mobile if they essentially use the same towers, but no, it's not that big of a deal. It's whatever. At least I can get 5G on the phone through something, which may end up meaning that T-Mobile, if you do T-Mobile proper, you might get 5G. Who knows? But overall, it's not that big of a deal. Like I said, 5G is 5G. The only real issues I've had in terms of connectivity is not being able to use my main Wi-Fi on here. I've had to use the Xfinity Wi-Fi hotspot that I get for free since I pay for Xfinity service, and that works no problem on here. Thankfully, on my 14 Ultra, even though it does seem to disconnect in the bathroom, very much like my OnePlus 9 Pro, it reconnects eventually. But overall, that's really the only, like, I've tried every fix for it. I've tried resetting the router. I've tried rebooting the phone. I've tried, forgetting the network and going back into it. It just doesn't work. And you know what? Fine. It's honestly not that big of a deal. I have other phones that will connect to it. I have my 14 Ultra that connects to it. And honestly, that's most important right now. So it's not necessarily a huge, gigantic loss for me personally. It just would be nice to connect this phone to my main internet. But, that's neither here nor there. Who would I recommend this phone for? Would I still recommend getting this phone in 2024? Almost 2025? Yeah, I would. Especially when you can find it for like $500 to $700 now. If you don't care about things like the medium telephoto not being as usable at closer like distances and stuff like that, if you don't care about having an overall larger like an overall more usable cameras overall, like I wouldn't sit like in terms of the main sensor, the IMX 989 is still phenomenal and it's still outclassing phones. Like let me show you guys here. I think I've shown this. But you can look at my community tab and you can see all the photos that I've taken so far. But I'm trying to find. I'm almost there. But there are a lot of photos that you can take on this phone, right? Like, come on. Like, come on, dude. Come on, dude. Like, really? Like, this is from the main sensor. I'm not even using, I'm not using things like the medium telephoto or nothing. This is coming from the main sensor in pro mode and everything. And it just looks very, sure, there's like a little hazing right there. But, fine, whatever. Not that big of a deal. You have it like this and nobody can tell. It looks so professional. I can't get this on another phone without having to do like significant edits. And even then you're using, depending on the phone, you're using smaller sensors. So it's like, it's not even like, it's no contest. It's no goddamn contest with a lot of, well, I'm talking about the main sensor. You're definitely using smaller sensors because guess what? Your iPhone, your Pixel, and your Galaxy, every big phone that comes to the US and sells in the US, they don't have 1-inch type sensors. They just don't. Not even OnePlus. You'd think OnePlus would at the very least have an ultra variant of their phone that have a 1-inch type sensor, but they just don't. And they're basically Oppo. And I'm not saying that to disparage OnePlus, but yeah, they're basically Oppo. So to me, it just doesn't make sense that not even a OnePlus has a 1-inch type sensor. Now they use large. All of them obviously use large main sensors, but they're not 1 inch. And once you get used to once you see the differences with what you can do, even when you don't shoot in RAW, if you just shoot JPEGs and just edit them in full 50 meg mode, bro, there's no competition. A lot of people like to add grain to their photos and shit, man. Add shitty little grain filters and just add grain to them. They look like shit. On here, they don't look like shit. And it's like, and especially, like, it's just crazy, man, how it fundamentally changes how you view smartphone cameras. I see all these other people take pictures with their phones. It's like, yeah, that's nice, but my Xiaomi can do it better. But yeah, that's all I really want to say with this. I did not want to make this half an hour. Jesus Christ. But no, whatever, it's fine. I'm getting the job done. And I said I was going to bring out more videos, right? And this is what I needed. I needed another phone that is comparable in quality to record these videos. Because, man, look at that background blur, bro. The 14 Ultra, bro, like, what? It like slowly focuses right there. Anyway, this is Spartan. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the support. Like the video if you like it. Share with people that are interested, and let me know in the comment section below. Do you still have a 13 Ultra? How have you been liking it so far? Do you plan on keeping it? And I will say, if you plan on keeping it and just waiting out for the 15 Ultra, hey, that's not a bad deal. I honestly was contemplating it too, but I don't regret it all getting the 14 Ultra. But yeah, have a good one, y'all.